Hi, my name is Sylvain Martel. Today I'm here to present you the EBS reports and dashboard for the people and by the people. Joining me today is Patrick Cimolini, who will be presenting and showing a demonstration of an Apex application totally integrated with EBS. He will be showing example of dashboard and interactive reports in the area of supplier scorecard. Interactive reports are probably the best feature of Apex, and we want to show you how EBS users can take advantage of the flexibility and more control over the data than the regular tools. With this interactive report, you can create ad hoc reports, some graphs, some grouping, and all sorts of personalized reporting that you need. Let me present you our organization, INSOM. INSOM has been the expert in Apex since 2004. We actually have a center of excellence here with an excellent group of Apex developer here in Montreal. We offer consulting services. We have offices across Canada and the US. And one of our core value is to have fun. So hopefully during this webinar, you'll have fun seeing what we have to present to you. Let me talk a little bit about myself. I'm an Oracle eBusiness Suite Apex Practice Director here at INSOM. I've been an EBS consultant for many, many years and doing Apex also alongside EBS. So I have a good experience with Apex since 2007. My co-presenter here today, Patrick Cimolini. He's a senior Apex consultant, has been involved with Oracle products since the early 1990s, and has been a presenter at numerous conferences and co-authors of Apex books as well. The agenda for today, using Apex in an EBS environment. So we're going to present different use cases and reasons why Apex is a good option. Offer some technical requirements and architecture best practices for you. Then we'll have a demonstration. That's basically the most important part of this presentation, is to have Patrick showing you the Apex dashboard and interactive report in the EBS environment. And then we'll give you a little bit of information about who's doing what when you create interactive report and dashboards. And finally, we're going to have a summary recapping what we have discussed today. We're going to have some question and comment period. We're going to have a chat board open for your questions during the presentation. And at the end, we'll open up the microphone for anyone who has other questions as well, and we'll try to answer all those questions for you. So using Apex in an EBS environment. Well, there's a couple of use cases we can think about. Interfaces. Bringing a front end in front of interfaces is always a good thing for users. So Apex is very, very appropriate for that. Mobile application. The beauty of Apex is that with the same framework, you can create desktop application or mobile application without having to learn a new framework, a new language, or so on and so forth. It's all part of the rapid application development environment. Reports, either they are interactive or through a PDF, that can be done with Apex, no problem. And finally, dashboard to present to you and to your users aggregate values, data in a graphical environment. Apex also offer web services in the form of REST, allowing you to connect to your corporate application or your cloud applications for your organization. So why Apex? Well, it's a no-cost feature of the Oracle database. The fully licensed paid database, or the fully licensed paid database, yeah, that's exactly what I said. It allows you to use all the different features, including Apex. The standard licensing agreement with EBS is that you cannot have customization done when you buy EBS in the database. Usually, organizations always have customization, so they have to pay the license. of the Oracle database, just like any other users. So there's no problem there, meaning Apex is already there. It's already paid for. You can create web apps only with using your SQL and PLSQL skill sets that you probably have in your development team already. So no need to know CSS, HTML, and so on and so forth. For creating the basic application, that's all you need. It's fully integrated with EBS in terms of security, multi-org, DFF. When InSum is creating application for EBS, sorry, we make sure that the EBS context is replicated in the Apex applications. So the configuration that the functional folks have created in EBS is totally replicated in Apex. We can also see it as an Excel in Access replacement. There's not really any need to copy and extract data from EBS into those tools, since we can do it all within Apex, within the application, within the database that eBusiness Suite offers. And finally, like I said, mobile application still using Apex, still using the framework that is provided with Apex, and your developers don't need to know anything else. Couple of technical requirements. Oracle eBusiness Suite 11i and above. So if you have an older version than 11i, it's probably time to upgrade. So we are supporting 11i and R12 and all the version of R12, including 12.0, 12.1, and 12.2. As I said, you need a fully licensed database to have Apex running. Always a good thing to download the latest release of Apex and of Oracle REST Data Services. And these downloads are free from OTN. Recommended architecture. As you probably know already, EBS is a 3-tier architecture. So your client is represented by the web browser. Your middle tier is where your Oracle WebLogic or Apache OHS resides. And your database tier represented by your Oracle database. So what do we need in order to get Apex to be happy with in this environment? We need to set up another application server. It could be WebLogic. That's a recommended orientation from Oracle, onto which Oracle REST Data Services will be running. Oracle REST Data Services is being used as a broker to answer the HTTP request from the client, pass it on to the database, and take the response back, send it back to the client. Very lightweight, not much is happening there, so you don't need a lot of power basically, unlike Java application or .NET application or other type of application that needs an application server where the power is really important there. What we've been doing at InSum is use different types of application server like Glassfish and Apache Tomcat. Those are certified application server that you can use. We've been using an InSum Glassfish very successfully, so our experience tells us that this is a really good product. All this is documented in the white paper that you see there at the bottom, so feel free to download it and check it out for yourself. Now for the DBA in the attendance, accessing EBS data from Apex, well, it all starts with the new schema that's been created when Apex is installed. So Apex 0500, basically, as you can see, is the version number. That's where all the metadata is residing to run Apex, and also where your application definition will be stored. And then you have your XX schema. So depending on your organization, you can have one or multiple XX schema, and your Apex engine and workspace will access those XX schema where your table will be residing. And just like your regular custom application created in eBusiness Suite, your PLSQL and your views will be residing in the app schema, and you will grant these views and these PLSQL to the XX schema that you have, just like any other custom application or extension that you will create in eBusiness Suite. There's no changes there. So that was a very, very quick overview of the Apex environment within EBS. I didn't want to take too much time because I think the most important thing that we all want to watch is a demonstration from Patrick. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick in order to show you, so that he can show you the interactive report and dashboard in a EBS environment. Patrick?
Thank you, Sylvain. Well, right now we're going to get going here and just get into the nitty-gritty of this demonstration. There we go. There we go. Bring up Firefox here, and what you're looking at right now is a e-business suite application running. And what we've got over here on the left is some responsibilities and then some things that the responsibilities can do. So here we've got Apex Supplier Scorecard. So we're just going to click on into that. And you can see that Apex came up quite quickly, or actually very quickly, and it sets up all of your, your relationships between the Apex world and the EBS world. So right now we're going to come here to a supplier environment. It's, I think Allied Manufacturing is what I'm looking for. Supplier site in Danville. We've got some data there. And the data belongs back in 2006. Let's just display everything for the full year, 2006, January to December. Let's search for that. And the first thing we see here is a dashboard. You can see that this dashboard is, I think fairly useful. And it could be configured in many, many ways. The dashboards here in Apex are very versatile. Now, the use case here is we're looking at some data. And, oh, by the way, this that refresh you just saw is one of the features of Apex. You can actually refresh these automatically at a certain time interval if you have transactions happening quite often. Quite handy for DBAs. Anyway, so use case here, we've got a year's worth of data here, and we're looking down at this lower graph here, and we can see that we've got this spike in April of 2006. And what we've asked the developers to do is give us a report with the details of April. And we just click on this little button here, and then we come straight into the report, which is an interactive report. Now, this report you've asked for, and the first time you look at it here, you think to yourself, ye gods, I've got to write another ticket and get this organized a little bit better, because this report as is kind of ugly. It has all the columns I asked for, but they're a real mismatch. They're unorganized, they're in the wrong order, and you think to yourself, if you're a manager, you're going to have a stream of your staff coming in complaining about how useless this report is and how ugly. Then you calm down a wee bit and you notice that you've got an actions item here, and you think to yourself, I wonder what that is. And what that is your doorway into configuring your own interactive reports. So what we're going to do here, first of all, we're going to show you that we can actually select columns and hide columns. So we're not really interested in the line quality or the vendor ID or the expense year or the month. Let's just get rid of those, push those over to the left. The organization ID and vendor ID, yep, don't want those. Let's push those. Expense date, we want that up right at the very front. This trend ID, we just want that at the very end. We're not too interested in that, but we still want to keep it around. So when we apply that, all of a sudden our report looks much, much better. And one other thing you want to look at, we want to make sure that the data is sorted properly. So let's sort this just from the header. Boom, there. Now we've got a sort applied to here. So this is a good starting point. And you think to yourself, well, I don't want to repeat all those clicks every time I bring this report up. Is there a way to save the result? And of course there is. Down here we have a little save report. And what we know how to do is give this a name. I'm just going to give it a number for sorting purposes here. You'll see that coming up later. This will be my default, or my, default demo. And we'll use this as our starting point for some of these other demonstrations I'm going to do. Notice here in the upper right corner here, we have a little checkbox that says public. If the developers have set this up for you, then you have the power to save reports publicly so that your fellow team members can see the report, or you can keep it private only for yourself. And we're going to keep this one private just for now, so we'll apply that. And if we look at the list of reports, you can see that this default demo report now is in my list of private reports. So that's a good start. Now let's push on. Now the other thing you'll notice here is that there's really no highlighting here. If you want to get your information from this report, you need to actually look very carefully at amount types, and your eye doesn't go quite quickly to this amount. And you noticed here we have some high dollar values and some low dollar values. You might want to be able to highlight some of those rows so that you go straight to the data that is causing you grief or data that you're interested in. So in order to achieve that, let's first highlight the amount column so it stands out. And what we do here is we come down and we can see we've got a format item that brings up a bunch of functionality that we've got. Like we can sort from here, control breaks, highlights. We can even compute custom columns. We're going to get into that very shortly. Do aggregates. We can even create charts here, group bys, and one of the really big treats here is you can actually do pivot tables. Get into that in a moment. But first, let's do the simple thing. Let us just highlight that amount column so it stands out. And we will call this amount column. Column highlight. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this a highlight type of cell. And we're going to just let's pick green today. Okay. Now, if you don't like the default colors here, just want to point out here, if you click this little up chevron, you can actually get a nice color picker here so that not only can you change the colors here, if you have corporate colors you want to use, you can very easily select your RGB values here and get very precise colors if you want. Not going to go into that in depth here, but just want to make sure you know that that does exist. So we're going to highlight cells. What we want to do here is come and pick the amount column, and we want to display everything that is greater than or equal to 0. So in effect, what we'll do here, since we're going to select all of the non-zero values, every cell in the column is going to be highlighted. We'll apply that change, and lo and behold, we have the amount column nicely highlighted. And so your eye goes directly to the most important column here. Now, we do want to highlight certain rows here. So what we want to do is highlight rows that have got high values or unusually low values. Now that is a little bit tricky here. And what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how you can creatively use computed columns in this environment. So back to the format. Let's go down and let's look at the compute environment here. And what we're going to do here is make a computation, a column heading called amount status. That's probably not too bad of a name. I'm sure you can think of better ones, but anyway, that's it. And you've got this computation expression box here. This is where we actually type in our computation. But down below here, you can see that we've got 3 columns, one for columns, keypad, and functions and operators. Under the columns, you'll see a list of our report columns together with an alias, a single letter alias over to the left. And I'm thinking that most of you, if you're familiar with MS Access and SQL, you're going to be finding this computation area quite easy to use. And what we want to do here is set up a computation on the amount column. And you can see here that the amount column has an alias of AA. So we'll use that. And if we wanted to select AA, we just click on that and it automatically comes up to our computation expression. And also too, we have a keypad for those of you who don't like using keyboard, so you can just click on those and click all sorts of things up into your computation expression. And then also over here on the right we have functions, and if we scroll down here you can see that you'll see a lot of functions that should be fairly familiar to you folks out there who are very familiar with SQL, Oracle SQL. So I've got some copy and paste stuff available. So let's not watch me type and screw things up. So what I'm going to do here is just copy and paste a very simple case statement into here. There we go. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the AA column, which is our amount column. When it's less than $1,000, we want to put low into the column. When it's between 1,000 and 10,000, medium. Else, if it's greater than 10,000, we want to put high in the column. So let us apply that to the report. And lo and behold, we've got this column out here with the appropriate high, low, and medium values. Now we can actually use this calculated column to actually help us highlight the appropriate rows. So let's see what we do there. Let's go back into the Actions menu, and we come down to Format, and we come down and we go into Highlight. And now we're going to go in and say High Amount. And we're going to pick, say, an ugly red color. And we're going to base this on the calculated amount status column. You can see here now that this calculated column is in our drop-down, so we can actually use that. So if the operator is equal, and we say, okay, if the row is a high, let's apply that. And now on the high rows, we've got an ugly red color here. And as I said, you can use the color picker to tone that down if you like, but we're just going to stick with that now because we're short on time. And now let's add something for the low values, because you might be wanting to look at low values for seeing why they're low or see if they're a waste of time to deal with. So we'll go back to the highlight. Same here. Let's get the low amount name. And you want to give these things a name so that if you want to come back later and edit these things, you can edit them. This is row, let's say yellow for things that are low. Caution. Again, go down to amount status and we'll pick the expression low and we'll apply that. And now you can see that the rows that have a low value in them are highlighted. Now this amount status, of course, is not very useful here because we've got the highlighting. What you can do here is click on the header here and notice that you've got a little box here. Instead of going into the Actions menu, you can actually hide it just from the header row. Kind of a shortcut there. So that's quickly done. So now this report is looking fairly good. Except for all of this vertical space here, we can sort of compress that by clicking on this little arrow on the upper left of the report. So now that's pretty good. So let us now save this. And we'll call this something like number 9 highlight report. Okay, I think you're starting to see that you can actually have quite a bit of fun with this in manipulating data and drilling into data and highlighting things for your team and all that kind of stuff. Another thing that I'd really like to show you here that is kind of a, well, I was with a client just a while ago and showed them that in Apex 5, under Format, what's new here in Apex 5 is the ability to pivot this table or create pivot reports. They were not aware of that, and when they looked at that, they realized that that actually satisfies about 80% of their reporting requirements. So this pivot thing is extremely valuable. But to make it work, you might need to do a little bit of work depending on your data. So let's first go into the Actions again. Let's do another computed column. Down to Compute. This one is going to be frequency. I've got a case statement here over in my handy text file. Let's bring that in so we don't have to type here. There we go. So what this is doing, it is actually breaking this column down in values or intervals of 5. We're looking at amounts that are between the 4100, 4105, 4105, and 4110, etc., etc. So fairly straightforward. Let's apply that. There, we've got that frequency. Now, also too, I want to be able to capture this amount, and notice that the amount has got a $sign in front of it in the formatting, and that kind of fools JavaScript into thinking that this is a character column. So what I'm going to have to do is create a column here through a computation that simply multiplies this by 1 so that it knows that it's a numeric column. So we'll do another calculation here. And let's just say 1 times AA, and AA is that amount column. Let's apply that. Whoops, gotta give it a heading. That's what it's telling me here, and so let's call this numeric amount. Okay, and apply that. Okay, now we've got all of the tools we need to get a pivot report going here. So let's do that, and we can show you how cool this stuff really is. Let's format, go down to the pivot here. Pivot column, let's pivot across the top. The amount status, that's that high, low, medium column. On the left-hand side, we want to display our frequency intervals. And then the function we want is we want to see the sum of the numeric amount. So that will give us the dollar values here. And we can give it a bit of a label for the heading. Let's call this frequency. And let's apply that. And now you can see that we have a pivot table with our high, low, medium across the top and the frequency rows across. And we can see inside there how much money is allocated to each one of these cells. Very powerful when you start getting into data analysis here. Now on the top here, you can see now that we have a report view that has not gone away, and you've got this little symbol for pivot that takes you to the pivot table. Very, very cool stuff. Well, let's go back to the report, and well, we've got this frequency histogram thing going, so let us try to do a frequency histogram over this using the numeric amounts and the frequency. So let's go down and notice here we have under format the ability to create a chart. Now, to be quite honest, the charting capability here under the interactive report is fairly, well, to be polite, basic. Okay, there's really not a lot you can do here, but very effective. So what we're going to do here is for the label of the report, we are going to pick our frequency. And for the values, what we want to do is we want to display the numeric amounts. Function, we want to do the sums that are inside each of those frequency intervals. Sort, we can sort by the label ascending, so they're sensibly placed. Title for the label would be frequency. And we can just put total amounts. And let's just apply that and see what we have. And there we go. We've got this little, very crude frequency histogram. Now, I'm sure that you all can realize that you could actually get very fancy with this. This is just the tip of the iceberg that you can do with an interactive report. You can get into some quite sophisticated data analysis here using this tool. And I just want to emphasize that to do all of this stuff, we did not have to call the IT department. We did not need any developers here. just want to point out what the developers give us. Here, what the developers gave us was this primary report. We have no control over that because that is controlled by the developers. However, that primary report is our starting point for building all of these other reports, both private and public. So the developers give you the primary report, and then you could just carry on. And notice up here we've got the report that generated the chart, that generated the pivot table. So you can see everything very, very easily and very quickly. And I don't want to lose this, so I would probably save this report. This would be the number 9 pivot report, and apply that. So I'm not going to show you the breaks and the aggregates. You can work through those on your own. I believe that all of you are very experienced SQL folks, so I think the words aggregate and group by and things like that are very familiar to you. So what I'd like to do now is sort of look at this from the developer perspective. And the reason I want to do that is that I know that many of you functional folks sort of get owly with the development folks because you say, well, I just want a chart here, and very often it goes off into a black hole. It takes weeks and months to return to you. And I just want to show you under the hood that the rapid application perspective of Apex. And so when you make a request of your developer folks, they should be able to return a result to you fairly quickly, because building an interactive report and a dashboard graph are fairly simple development tasks within the declarative framework of Apex. Apex is very declarative. So let's have a look. I'm just going to switch over to Chrome here to get going. Alt-Tab. Oops. Command. There we go. Now we're in the Apex development environment, and the first thing I want to do here is point out I've already created a little test application here that's got absolutely nothing in it. I'll just run this just so you can see it. See, there's nothing in here, so we'll go back into the development environment. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a interactive report just so you can see how how much effort is required for that task. Then I'm going to create a chart, and I'm going to enable that chart to drill into the interactive report so you can see how that linking is done, and just see what your developers need to do for you in this environment. So let's do a create page, and I'm going to create a report, and we're going to just do an interactive report here. And we're just going to make this page 2 just to make things easier for me, because I've got some cut and paste. We're just going to keep everything as the defaults because I don't want to take too much time. We are going to create a, let me just call this is our link on the home page. So I'm just going to call this IMP, because I'm going to do the IMP IR for interactive report, just so we can remember what is what. And here we go. Here's the table or view owner is XXAB. And now we're just going to drill down here and look for, oops, where are we? There we go. Demo chart AMP table. Okay, that's the one I want. There's all the columns. We'll just leave that as default. Next, and create. There we go. That's all it takes to create an interactive report. Now let's just run that to see what damage we've done. And you can see over here, I've already got the navigation all set up. We've got a link to a single row view. Go back to the report view. That was all done for us declaratively. We've got all of our columns here. We've got our action menu, so we can do all of that stuff that I showed you previously. So that's an interactive report and how it is created by your developers. Now let's look at the SQL statement under that. If we go into the report region, and if we come over here, we can click on this little icon here, and you can see that we've got a select statement. So after you get this created, you can come in here and change this select statement any way you want if you have something a little more complicated you want to do. But fundamentally, this is just a SQL statement. And I'm sure all of you folks out there are very familiar with this type of process. So that's the interactive report created. Oh, one more thing I want to show you here. If we go to the attributes, I mentioned you can turn things on and off at the development area. And if I come down to the, here we go, the actions menu region, you can see here we have a bunch of yes, no fields. And so you can include the action menu, yes or no. Filters you can turn on and off. Select columns you can turn on and off. And for all of those options you saw under the action menu, you can turn those on and off selectively. One of the ones I generally turn off is flashback. Flashback is handy if you want to look at your data as it was, say, 10 minutes ago or 2 weeks ago, depending on how much memory your DBA is allocated for you. I find a lot of end users get a little bit confused by that, but the option is there whether you want it or not. So I'm just going to leave it at the default, which is yes. Okay, so that's that. So we've got an interactive report. Now, oops, let me click that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is create a chart on the department table and show you how easy that is. And then we're going to create a link back to this report that will filter this automatically on the department number. So let's go back into the application. Let's do a create page. This time we're going to select chart. Let's keep it simple. Let's do a vertical 3D column chart. This stuff we can keep. Whoops, let me go back. Let me just make this page 3 just to keep things simple. Okay, we'll create a navigation entry here, chart, that's good enough for now. Now here's where we can do some pretty stuff here. You can give it a chart title. Let's just call this DEPT. Let's give it a gradient color. The background color, let's come up here. Let's make it ugly and purple. And we'll select that. Gradient angle, 45 degrees. This is just to give you some idea of what you might be able to do here. X-axis title, that would be department. Y-axis, number of employees in DEPT. You know, that's pretty standard stuff there. Now here's where things get interesting. Now this wants a SQL statement, and this is a blank text box here. And you might think, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do a bunch of research. Not necessarily. Each one of the charts in Apex requires a certain format for its SQL statement. And the good news here is that in this show high region down here, you've got a bunch of sample code here. So you don't really have to look up the format. For this particular chart, the chart needs a link column, a label column, and a value column. Very, very simple. And also too, they give you a little bit of boilerplate here for the format of the link column. And the link column format is very simple. Standard Apex URL, which is a colon delimited string. Nothing, there's no rocket science here. Your junior developers can come up to speed with this colon delimited string very, very quickly and figure out, you know, what parameters they need and whatnot. So not too much to talk about there. The main takeaway here is that the select statement is very, very easy to understand. Also, too, some of the formats of the select statements are different depending on what kind of chart you're dealing with. Like a Gantt chart SQL statement is going to be quite a bit different than this very simple bar chart. But in all cases, the sample code is here inside the wizard. So you don't have to do a lot of research for that stuff. It's just simply given to you. Now I've got some shake and bake code here. There we go. This is a very simple select statement, and we have the link value here plus the label value plus the value. And all this is returning is a count of the employees in a department. So this will be our bar chart. And up here, there's some special syntax here. You can see this RIR, which means Reset Interactive Report. The link here, there's a IREQ, which means Interactive Report equals underscore department number. So I'm going to be filtering the DEPNO column in the interactive report with the value of DEPNO. Very simple syntax. As I say, this is pretty straightforward. Your juniors will be able to do this quite easily. So let's just create that report or chart. Let us save. Let us run. And here we go. There's our beautiful report with some bars. And so you can see the accounting department has got 3 employees in it. Operations is empty. We've got a few employees in research and sales. So if I click on sales, this takes us to the interactive report. And notice we have a filter automatically set for department equals 30, which is the sales department. Now, if I select somebody else, if I go to the accounting department, click on that, there we go. We have an interactive report that's pre-filtered for the accounting department. Very simple to do, and this can get very entertaining when you have a more complex data situation where you want to drill from a chart into a report, from a report into another chart, and so on and so forth, down into the bowels of your data model to find out what details go into your aggregates. So the takeaway here is that this declarative environment that the Apex team has given us is a very efficient way to create dashboards and interactive reports. So I'm going to turn things back over to Sylvain. He's going to do a little bit of a summary for us. Sylvain?
Thank you, Patrick. That was an excellent demonstration of the functionality of interactive report and dashboards. As you could see, it's fairly simple to implement that in your environment. So let's go back to our presentation for a couple of closing remarks. As we can see, we have different responsibilities in creating the interactive reports. We have developers task and end user task. And what those are, for developers, create the SQL statement and the drill down links for creating all the different report actions and create the default report that will be available to all the users. From an end user point of view, what you can do with that set of data now is add and hide columns and sort filters, highlights, rows and cell as we saw previously, and all sorts of other actions that you can do with this interactive report, which becomes an ad hoc reporting engine for your users. For dashboards, obviously we have the same 2 groups, our developers and our end users. A little bit more involved for developers as they have to create obviously the SQL statement to get the data out of your database and the drill down links, format the chart so that it corresponds to the business requirements, and add the different filters for the SQL statement for the filtering or the drill down and so on and so forth, just like Patrick showed you. End users on their end, they basically become a little bit more just regular users as opposed to be very dynamic and interactive with the interactive reports. So obviously they would display the chart, probably do a couple of filtering actions and selection criteria. But in their case, that's pretty much what they have to do for dashboards. Will we have more features available for users in future releases of Apex? It's really possible. The Apex community is very dynamic, and there's actually a website where we can submit our requests for enhancements. So often the Apex group is looking at that carefully and bring a lot of new different features in upcoming releases. As a summary now, Apex gives you a very rapid application development environment. As you saw towards the end of Patrick's demonstration, it was really quick to create an interactive report, a dashboard, link the two together with only a few clicks and defining a couple of parameters in the definition of the application. Interactive report gives end users a lot of power. Ad hoc reporting, grouping, even creating charts within an interactive reports. Dashboard give end user a lot of information in a graphical environment and in graphical view. Apex is totally integrated with EBS. As you saw at the beginning of the demo, when you were coming from the responsibility, you could see the operating unit and the suppliers related to this operating unit. And you already own Apex. It's in the database. It's a no-cost feature of the database, so you own it. So why not use it? So that concludes our presentation today. If you have any question, feel free to go to our website where we have blogs and all sorts of information about Apex and EBS with Apex. Or again, send us an email for Sylvain Martel at smartel@insum.ca or for Patrick Cimolini, pcimolini@insum.ca. Thanks and see you soon.